Hey there, and welcome to the Jeffrey Van Dyke Show, a podcast for paradigm changers. Each week I speak with another influential leader who's changing the conversation for their audience, their industry, and this world. I am so glad you're here. Welcome to the show. So good to have you with us. We have the Brothers Koren, Isaac and Thorald Koren. Welcome to the Jeffrey Van Dyke Show. This is where we talk with game-changing messengers about their work in this world, about bringing their message forward, and kind of what that takes and what it asks of you. As we dive in, let's just start with a little invocation, and we'll go from there. I'll introduce you formally. So the message I'm getting is we are all liberators. And if there is one common denominator that binds us all together, that created our friendship around that pool, it is that we are liberators of the voice, liberators of the human spirit, liberators in this world, and that this is a conversation about liberation.
Beautiful. Thank you for having us, Jeffrey. And how lucky are we to be in the company of a liberator such as yourself?
Hey, we are in it together, my friends. So for those of you that don't know the Brothers Koren, they're badasses with huge hearts. So they're musicians. They started in the band The Kin. That was their band, and toured with Coldplay and Pink and Rod Stewart and all sorts of good stuff. I've been on Conan, etc. And then at some point you took a left turn, or a few. They still produce music right now under the Brothers Koren. They've had some other gigs they've done and other projects, but you also do this work around the songwriter's journey and around helping people find their big voice. So you do keynote speaking, concerts, I guess you might call them, all sorts of interesting things. But here's why I wanted you to be here. Your willingness to follow the muse is strong, and your ability to help other people get honest about who they are and what they're here to share, and how to share what they're here to share as deeply, powerfully, honestly, authentically themselves. And I think that truth in communication is something we don't get a lot of. And I consider you both real experts in cultivating truth in communication, whether it's a spoken word, song, or something else. Beautiful. So I'm wondering if you could start by just sharing a little about like what you do. And I know that's a bit of a loaded question for the two of you because you do a few different things. But let's learn a little bit about your work and your point of view. And then we'll get into kind of your journey into it as we dive in.
I would just thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you.
I would say our point of view or our perspective today, and really what we've been cultivating over the last 6 years since we quote unquote came off the road. And what we really mean by that is and it didn't happen overnight, but over the course of a year or two, we slowly kind of took off this hat called trying to make it as a performer, so to speak. And I think we reoriented our experience of performance to something else. And as we did that, we came less in the service of ourselves and hoping we'd, become a huge band in the world, bigger than we were at the time, to one that served up all voices, including our own. I think there was a shift there. I would say today, where Isaac and I both share perspective, is we're both almost obsessed with helping other people discover their true, distinct voice and stand in it, share it willingly, feel the unfeelable again, and wake up.
Hold on. You just said something. Feel the unfeelable. What do you mean by that?
To feel the unfeelable again means to venture back toward the parts of you that became inhibited in your mind and body, where at different points in this life or other lives, depending on your belief, you became closed door to areas of your expression and creativity that are waiting for you to have the courage again to allow your mind body to feel essentially what was unfeelable, but now you have the courage to feel it again. And so we both are a stand for people to realize that everything they ever wanted is happens when they allow all of those colors back to the forefront. So we're a stand for that together, whether it's in the written word, where someone gets to actually, through memory, catharsis, mission, be in their story again, into song, into lyrics, or in the expression and reception of this voice they've been given, which really clues in to everything we do with people collectively.
I love it, because you're pointing to this piece of, hey, everything you want is available to you, and it's behind this door. And if you have the courage to walk through it, it's all there. I think part of your gift is helping people even know where the door is. Like, I get that conceptually, but if you don't even know where the door is, where are you going to know to have the courage to walk through? You know?
Yeah. And I think that's essentially what we did, is just walk through the next doorway that was opening for us together. But, to speak of mission, it was, 20 years ago this year that Thorald and I thought it was a good idea to hitchhike from Boston, as basically, Thorald was a teenager and I was in my very early 20s, hitchhiked down the coast from Boston, where I was at college, down to Miami, where Thorald hadn't told me yet he had a girlfriend. His now partner.
Luckily, she's my now partner of 21 years.
So it was a decent hitchhiking journey then.
Well, halfway through, we sat at, I think it was the last time we went to a KFC, and we said to each other that we realized that the only reason we were willing to do this rock and roll dream thing was, that if we had a mission, and, we kind of agreed and never spoke of it again, but, and we have a tattoo each for it. But the mission was to show ourselves, to prove ourselves that love can conquer fear, and that was, it had to happen in the human and in the song. Like, can these big epic universal love songs exist? Because that's what seemed to come out of us. And I think the answer that we got after 20 years was no. Not like that.
I want the T-shirt. Can love conquer fear on the front? Nope.
Not in the music business.
Not quite
6 years ago or whatever, and it's possible yet. But we wanted to move to LA to try our hand in the world of songwriting, because we found ourselves traveling from New York all the way to LA every month and doing these amazing songwriting sessions, and all of these publishers were asking us, so we did it, and we moved our young families out, and we would go into these sessions. We wrote for insert famous person here, and kind of got locked into some of these sessions and had to give over these. It was amazing to kind of witness what the depth and the length and the breadth of this world is like. And Thorald and I, after about 6 months of really doing the sessions, doing the work, looked at each other and said, "This is not it, is it?"
Literally one afternoon, we looked at each other and both went, "This isn't it, is it?"
The idea of getting together to write a song, thinking about what's hot right now, what are people talking about, like making these pastiche amalgamations of modern day culture, which is in relative decay, making these pastiche songs for just for the hit. And it wasn't, we're more interested in the human behavior and human psychology and why music affects people, and then writing music from that place, from that self-awareness, from that knowledge or awareness of the person standing right in front of you. Like, when we meet an artist to write a song with them, still in the music business, the first 30 minutes is like getting to the bottom of who they are and how they feel, and
these artists look up and go, "Wow, no one's asked me that." Right. No one's asked you like, how do you feel today, and what have you yet to express into song, and what have you been waiting to to admit and feel and express to yourself that might actually be worth sharing? And they're like, wow, no one's asked me that. And you're like, how?
Really?
Like, you're an artist, you're a voice, you're someone that people will buy a ticket to and put in their car and have in their lives. Well, what else would you want?
Yeah.
Would they want from you than for you to be yourself fully?
But you know, following the voice and following that realization of truth was incredibly painful at the time, because we had moved our young families out. We weren't without, we were without touring income, and the songwriting game is like a long game. So it was a very awkward moment. Thorald and I kind of got lost driving through Beverly Hills. And we said, well, what is it then?
We asked,
like, we have to figure this out.
We asked the question out loud in the Venn diagram of a brother breakdown. And we went, well, what is it? And this idea struck us. In 1 hour.
Given to us like a song.
Hopelessly lost around Civic Center Drive, because every time we'd get struck with a new piece of it, we'd forget to turn. And if you've been around Civic Center Drive in LA, it's like, you have to be truly present. Yeah. And so we finally get out of the car and we look at each other, and what a download in this hour was.
Scribbled it down.
What if we became someone's brothers? And this first-time artist or established artist, what if we came into their lives and, with their permission, just walked with them from inception and got to know them like we were their new best friends, like it was 9th grade at a sleepover and everyone had gone to bed and we were asking each other ridiculous questions? Or what if we dove into the music that's moved them their whole life? And what if we put it together somewhere between like our early men's work versus like Michael Douglas' The Game? Like, what if we took them on an adventure to truly dig for gold within them? And so we got out of the car and thought, well, if we do that for a few months and then start writing song with them, imagine how powerful the songs would be. It seemed like a no-brainer. And I've been a voice coach for 20 plus years. Isaac's been a mentor and
studying musical cosmology for 20 years since college.
And so we just went like
understanding how music is unique to us. Your music, the music that you listen to is entirely different to the music that I listen to if you listen to the details. And so, in the music business, we saw that, the process of artist and repertoire, A&R, artist and song, there was this disconnect with who the artist was as a human, and the placement of the song. And so, today we work with artists on record labels under the moniker Braves with a producer. And, that's the very thing we do, is we get curious about the artist, and then we bring, our aesthetic to the table and we create something together, collaboration,
So, there's a lot of stuff there to break down. First, I just want to say a bunch of those questions that you just asked, like, hey, what have you yet to express today? What, like, these are questions that I don't care what kind of messenger you are, that we all need to be asking ourselves. I'm going to ask you for a list of some of these questions to put in the show notes for folks who are listening later on, right? When we just need a prompt of, oh yeah, I forgot to ask. I never thought to ask myself that. Oh, no one's ever asked me that. I've never asked myself that. Yeah.
And, to up it, Jeffrey, and this is maybe the core of our work, and we'll tell you about how we went from recording artists in LA to voices from everywhere in the world in a second. And it happened quick. The truth is, what happens when you ask people you care about in your world today those questions first? In a way? Like, what if you go to someone you're connected with and say, not just, hey, how are you? Waiting for the good. But you say, like, what's next to express? Like, what if you actually, what occurs when you create the container and the environment where you actually ask the question you hope someone would ask you? What happens when we ask our close community questions we wish someone had asked us today? What happens? What happens to your ecology?
Yeah, I'll tell you what happens to me as I hear it. There's a curiosity and like, oh, that's rich, and also oh crap, that's pretty vulnerable. I'm not used to asking people that on a random Tuesday at 4 p.m.
I know.
Well, we've been lucky to have music as this excuse to ask people difficult questions, because it doesn't have the, it's not like sitting down to a therapy session and you're talking about your life. you're talking about this one box called music, and we can get inside it and go, well, what's the next thing that you would do, musically speaking, if you weren't to care what anyone thought of you?
I love what you just said, because I do the same thing in marketing, right?
Yeah.
Marketing and messaging, digging into people's really what they're calling, what their heart and what their life's training program for it has been, so that they can dig into what they're here to say.
Yeah.
And I've always been fascinated. I've never thought of your work and my work in that way before, but when I downloaded my process for my work, I was like, oh, that is tricky from a like spiritual place, right? And it is tricky to like, oh, you want better messaging? You want messaging that like captivates people and draws them in and has them follow you and buy from you, right? Because all the people I work with are like, my messaging isn't fully representing who I am and my voice, right? And I know it, and I don't know how to change it. So I say, oh yeah, we can do that. Sure. We're just going to take a little journey into, your core wounds. Be sure that we're connected with a spiritual source of wisdom in order to do it. No problem. Right. And it works just like your process works. It's refined, all that good sort of stuff, but it's this little carrot, and it's a way of speaking to the ego about something it wants and giving it to the ego, but in almost a subversive way, where we also go places we typically are reluctant to visit.
Totally.
It's kind of like we have to trick ourselves into transformation.
It's a magic. It's
transformation through the front door. It just doesn't feel right. It's like, no, I don't want to change. And the people closest, like you just said, like the people closest in my life don't necessarily want me to change.
Yeah.
Right. And so they're less likely to be the ones to ask me these confronting questions so that I may change. But really, aren't we there as agents of change for each other? Can we be there?
And I think that's super important, Isaac, is our people closest to us, family, friends, professional community. They're like, hey, I like that version. I know that version of you. That one's working for me. So you don't need to change. Nope, you can just stay right there. Thank you very much.
Don't change.
It's working
Don't
for
change
me.
a thing.
That's the best. I mean, that's the perfect way to put it. It's working for me, and yet
it's working.
Yeah,
and it's working for me, says person A, B, or C, right? But person zero, person number one, it might not be working for so much anymore.
Yeah, like our grandmother and mother always said, everything. This too shall pass, or everything's always changing, was the sort of like the spirit of our mother's side. And we wrote a song called Everything's Changing, and it's true. And I live by, and I feel like this ties directly in with how we help journey with people, is that, everything is constantly emerging, expanding or contracting, but there's an emergence that's wanting to take place. So there's nothing static. There's nothing stable, really. It's like, wow, that was amazing. Okay, what's next? And that's the creative process too, So it's right there. And like, backing up to that moment when we first said to someone 2 weeks after we had this download in the car about the songwriter's journey.
Someone came to us.
Thankfully
a request.
And it was a kin fan. It was like a young kin fan and of our band. And she reached out and said, do you ever work with a first-time artist?
Yeah.
And we said, funny you should ask. So we quickly put it in a doc, like a Google doc, and gave it a value.
Yep.
And her mum said yes. And we took her on this gauntlet, virtually. And then she flew out to LA and had an amazing, life-changing experience with us. She was 17 at the time. And she had this amazing time. And then a year later, she won the John Legend songwriting competition with 5 other people from around the country, and ended up getting flown out to South by Southwest and Spin, and like, it was our first ever songwriter's journey this occurred for.
Which we quickly realized wasn't the point. Really soon after, we realized that the point was that humans can, it's so hard to see ourselves, really, and to be connected with that higher, power, God, higher self, whatever someone calls it. But, to be connected to that through this gift called music that we were all born with, as this, call it a biohack if you prefer, but, this gift from God, biohack, evolutionary step, you name it. But, it's music, just like it's color. And, but just when you were talking before, the song, I mean, it was so captivating, the song of your voice, that I had to like really focus not to listen to it and focus on what you were saying, because you have this song that you were just singing, especially when you were singing your purpose. I was just like, whoa, like it was going up the hill, like, I was like, wow, there's high notes to what you are doing. There's a high vibration to when you started talking from your purpose and like just sharing your message, whoop, high vibration, a song was coming out. So, but we're doing all this subconsciously. We're tuning to each other, we're hearing each other's song.
Well, and ultimately, when we're bringing our work to the world, whether it's a song, something written, a Facebook Live video, I don't care, a podcast episode, it's all frequency. And you guys really get this, that the way I see it is like, there is a higher purpose for all of us, full stop. And we're never fully living our potential, right? There's always more potential to be expressed. So there's always latent potential sitting in every one of us. And I feel like part of our job, part of our role as activators of a new story for humans, for industries, for communities, is when we sing our song, literally or metaphorically, and we're tapped into our purpose, what we're doing is we are activating the latent vibration in the listener, right? That there are people waiting for someone to call them forward, to call them up, that there's this bigger mission in them just sitting there, right on the surface sometimes, right? And when we come and we speak from our purpose, they start to, vibrate. They start to resonate with it, is the language we usually use. Oh, I really resonate with that person. Yeah, what are we? Yes. We're speaking in the language of vibration, of frequency.
Entrainment.
Entrainment, in music, we call it sympathetic vibration. They literally start humming. Their body comes alive. There's something in that. And that's what happens with us, with a great song, with a great book, with a great speaker.
That's why it's and so everyday people, you can affect every single person you talk to with your frequency, with your vibration. So if you're an Eeyore, think about that. You're bringing so like work on your tone. Tone up. Like, hello. I don't know what is your song. What feels authentic to you, so that you can keep raising up, the tone.
And the thing I also know about the two of you, so here's something fascinating. Here's where I want to go for a minute. And I haven't actually said yet, I've recorded with you guys, right? So I'll talk a little bit about my journey. Yes, amazing. But here's what I love. So Thorald, I know you have a body of work you've been working on for some time, and now a podcast, really about mental health, if we put it in that kind of language, right? Isaac, you've been writing about and thinking about and expressing about how God is music and music and God. So, in my work, I think a lot about our life's journey, our core wounds, and how they shape and mold what we're here to do, that they're the training program for our life's work. But I also work with people to get tuned in to their guidance and tap into what their mission is and what they're here to bring to the world, what they're meant to activate in the world. So there is this heaven and earth component. And I'm looking at the two of you, and I've never really until this moment really seen the heaven and earth. Of course, there's a mixture of the two in each one of you. But Thorald, you coming from this place of let's I'm going to use my language. Let's get into the darkness to explore it in order to find the light, right? And Isaac, you going, hey, let's tap into the God inside of music, the music inside of God, that you are. And there is this combination of really, I would say, heaven and earth between the two of you that comes together as the Brothers Koren.
Nice.
Have you ever thought of it that way?
That's
Thanks
a nice
for seeing
way.
us. We've never really understood, why from the moment Thorald came out, and it was a long time coming, because our mother was, it took 4 years for her to kind of to conceive of Thorald and birth him. But as soon as he came out, within days or within weeks, we had this connection. And
because he's your baby brother, so
yeah. And so but it is wonderful to have this, and also to, like you said, to have the individual path, and to to witness that.
I love what you're saying, Jeffrey. And most listeners probably have a sibling, so we're this incredible example. Of all the years we toured around, people had two ways of approaching us as brothers. In the kin now, it's, wow, what's it like to just partner up with your brother? That's the people that have a great relationship with their sister or brother. The other people are this, wow, what's that like with your brother? You're like, it's a bit tense with your brother and sister.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. So either way, there's a deep relationship there. And underneath the word relationship is the word collaboration, right? And so we have that between us. And I think, just to unpack heaven and earth, the one thing I know of myself is that I am as wizard-like as I get and as dimensional as I go. I'm really called to help call back people in to this embodied now, and to explore the space of the mind-body as in the exact amalgamation of stardust or this acoustic instrument, this body they've been given, to say, no matter how wild, wonderful, and vast you are, what happens when you dare to be in this body now? Isn't that incredibly mind-blowing? So, and in order to get to that place, I had to do it myself, because I just was disassociated from that. And so that's been the biggest breakthrough for me, what I get to guide people on. And then at the same time, I get to experience with Isaac, Isaac can just like travel dimensions as a downloader. He's like out in the outskirts, and dancing around, bringing back information. And I get to kind of bring it through my hands, or bring it through into the piano, bring it into the guitar, bring it into a song frame. So that
his
kind of
design
combination
is very anchored.
Yeah.
For sure.
Now,
I would say gritty.
Gritty is good.
I'll take
Gritty is
it.
good. Yeah, both hands in.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I did not choose. I did not. This was not planned. Me sitting here talking about this. I did not choose music, nor did I choose God. But over years,
It chose you.
They chose me for sure. And when I was 15, and I was going to be a lawyer, something secure, something, whatever,
Respectable.
Respectable. Like we come from, a hippie mum, and then a dad who was a hippie when he met our mum, but, was from, a suit wearing family, and Norwegian. So kind of austere, right now I'm making a big fuss kind of thing. Don't make a fuss.
Yep.
Anyone ever heard of that before? Don't make a fuss.
Yep.
So, something that, And so I heard this voice one day, and Thorald was right there when it happened, playing guitar, and it was our first trip to America. And I was listening to loud, angry teenage music in my headphones, and all I remember was not hearing the sound and hearing anymore, and hearing this deep voice that simply said, "You will sing." Something similar to that, like really deep, and smiling at me like a cosmic joke. And I ripped off the headphones and I said, "Thorald, did you just hear that?" He's like, "What? Hear what?" I was like, "It was a voice." He's like, "Huh, no, I don't. Do you even remember this?"
Yeah, I did.
Okay, good. And I said, he said, "Well, what did it say?" And I said, "It said, 'You will sing.'" And he said, "Huh, maybe you will." Right? And I thought nothing of it. I forgot
love
about
that, Thorald. Maybe you will.
It was very like nonchalant and like, like somewhere he kind of was like, yeah, that's right.
I tapped
strange,
it. I was like, whoa.
And
It's a lot.
It's a lot, but why? No.
We're going to do that together?
Oh dear. And I didn't think of it. Went home, the big catalyst moment, catalyzing wound, that Thorald and I share, which is part of the reason why we, have a shared mission too, is that we were both wounded, to us tragically, because it was a perfect family with the perfect mum and dad who loved each other. But mum, her voice needed to be drastically reclaimed, and she couldn't see an option within even the country. And so she left the country, moved to New York to reclaim her voice in the theater, where she started, as this person in the Pacific touring cast of Hair. Went to New York. Kids, I'm out. 11-year-old daughter. Thorald was,
No, I was 12.
Sorry, you were
and
12.
She was 9.
Anyway, yeah. So it all, the shit hit the fan, and so that kind of now brings us to this place in a kind of a heroic journey we didn't even see, which was we are now working with predominantly 55-year-old women is the most prominent person that comes to us saying, I need change,
and I need to
connect to my voice.
I need to be empowered again in my voice. I need to stand up. I need to sing out. I need to
do it
out.
in a safe environment.
I need courage. I need help. I need a safe space. Like everything our mother needed, we are for women.
Yeah. Isn't that fascinating?
So crazy.
It's so wild. Yeah. I there's plenty of that in my life too, as you know.
Yes.
So here's what I'm curious about. So there's been multiple instances where you've gotten direction, right? Spiritual direction, I'll call it. You've gotten a download, you've gotten the big voice, so whether it's you will sing, or whether it was, we can't find our way outside of Beverly Hills because we keep getting this download about this new thing, and oh crap, we came out here to be songwriters for pop hit artists, and this is not that. And Isaac, I know you didn't intend to sing. Thorald, I think, was a musician, and it's like, oh, I'm part of this too.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, over the years, what have you learned? Because I know with both of you, maybe more so with you, Isaac, but I don't know if that's true. I know there's plenty of instances where it's like, really? Not sure I want to do that. Like I when you said earlier, Isaac, I didn't choose music, I didn't choose God, but it chose me. I think a lot about, like, a calling can feel like a burden until we choose our calling back.
Yeah.
And that's a piece I feel like a lot of people don't really get, is like, if it doesn't want to feel like this painful thing, like you've got to choose it back.
I'll admit to really having to choose coach, because I love, there was a part of being an artist, for a living, so to speak, which is another conversation. But the part of being an artist, the freedom of it, the freedom to be you, and that's enough on a stage with some nice lighting and some sound, right? That's enough, right? And everyone wants to feel that. Everyone wants to feel enough. And guess what? We realize that everyone is. And there's this kind of distortion that happens, a projective distortion between audience and artist that both get used to. So the artist gets used to every day, they got to get that hit of being projected onto, because then I feel like I'm okay. And the audience go and they project it onto someone else. So it's not actually occupying, it's experiencing, you're tasting it through them. But you're not actually occupying it in yourself, and you have it. You have it. You're all a badass rock star inside.
Everyone.
And we vacate ourselves and project it onto the screen of the other, the artist, the one that's actually good enough to do it. That's your job.
Totally.
No.
I want to just add at the same time that, and this is what, when you asked the question, this is what came to me. And I don't fully understand it yet, Jeffrey. I feel like it's still unfolding for me. Because, and I'll speak for myself. I'll speak for myself. I got really burned by the music industry, and I don't think I've said that publicly like that simply. I don't think even when I met you 5 years ago, I would have felt it, because Braves, we were very much up to other stuff, signed on a label when we met. But I did, and call it burn, call it
maybe disillusion,
or call it no, actually burned,
burned,
and call it caramelization if you want to change the lens. But what I'm discovering more and more is that we were prepared, and I truly say today, yay, your doggy's with us. Our doggy is right next to us, but being very calm.
Somehow,
I wanted to say that truly we were prepared. Now, I don't know what's next. I don't know what happens for the Brothers Koren album next or anything else we write. If there's a Grammy in our future, if there's we're back and there's thousands of people. Regardless of what happens next, we were prepared exactly in the way we needed to receive this calling, which is to hear the world's song one voice at a time from every different vantage point of helping others express and create. We were carved and sculpted to know how to come through this really huge experience of reaching out into the American dream and saying, let's become the next biggest band in the world. And coming through that, we discovered so much about how to help every single person connect and empower to what is essentially them. So in one sense, all these years we were pushing at what we thought was our calling, and it still might be. And yet there was this other thing saying, okay, you're ready now. Here's this door. And we're like, what's that door? And we opened that door, and it was this magical playground that the most graceful door openings we have ever experienced. Over the last 5 or 6 years, we have just surfed. And we've put in a lot of work.
Yeah.
But it's been one door after the other of just yeses and grace and step it up, expand, step it up, expand.
Yep.
And so I just want to acknowledge that sometimes the mission you feel is your mission is the preparation for the true mission.
Or maybe, like you said, maybe we'll be a big recording artist band again someday. Maybe that's the ego thinking there is a destination.
Exactly.
Yes.
Maybe it's it's all preparation for what's next, and that's preparation for what's next, and that's preparation for what's next, and there is no there.
I love
with
that.
an ending. Maybe not even with this body in this lifetime. I think the ego projects a lot about someday I'm going to get there, right?
And what it's meant to look like.
Exactly.
And we have the picture. And I'm going to get there. And then crowning achievement, done. I did my thing.
And then I'll feel this.
And
then I'll allow myself to feel this.
Then I'll play golf, and then I'll enjoy the beach.
Here's something I do want to mention as you were talking, though, about this preparing you for that. So you talked about, Isaac, this people's hopes, dreams, aspirations being projected on you when you're on stage, right? And you guys were on stages of 50,000 people, right? So that's a lot of energy. That's a lot of projection. Those are a lot of hopes and dreams.
Yeah.
And that you got to be the stand-in for, we just get to be us. You mean us is enough? And you get to be a stand-in for that.
Yeah.
And then here you are all these years later, helping people lean into, you get to be you.
Yes.
And it's almost like you got these imprints from these thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people about being you.
Yeah.
With your own personal experience of being you. And then you get to take that now and help people actually step into it instead of project it onto the next artist.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, to watch someone realize their own significance, as a body, as a unique musical resonant imprint, a musical cosmology, I like to call it, and as a story, something you are, really actually helped Thorald and I, but I'll speak for myself. You really helped me decode my story in the last 5-6 years, because we get to this place in our life where we're blind to it, and so someone can say, hey, ask these questions. Mm-hmm. And then through those questions, you realize your significance, not from the ego place, right? But from God,
from being an expression of the divine.
Exactly. So, or the earth, however it may,
or the earth, or however, yeah.
So here we are, and witnessing that in life, like it felt better than walking through. We were signed to Interscope Records, and we were the last rock and roll band that Jimmy Iovine got to sign, and we were meant to make him eat his hat, literally, and we didn't yet. But
didn't he say that?
Yeah, he was like, "Make me eat my hat."
He was like, "Rock's dead." But
And so, but you'd walk into those rooms, you'd walk in. Sometimes you'd get out on the wrong floor and you'd be in the legal department. That's a nightmare. But you'd go to your A&R room, right, where you're meant to talk about music, when you're meant to talk about the God-given right of music. And you go in there and there's boxes and there's no frames on the walls,
like
and there's just
offices.
a half-eaten sandwich, and we're talking about the charts.
Yep.
And that's not music, okay? So, I guess we went to we walked out of that building and said, okay, well, if it's not here, then where is it?
What is it if it's not this?
And we didn't know.
And I want to say also, when we're on, go ahead.
Here's the thing that you just said that I think is super important. And we didn't know.
We didn't know.
And I think so often when one thing is, you've reached the end of the rope on one thing, right? It's done. The door is closed. We cling to the freaking door because we don't see the next thing yet. And, we often call that liminal space, the space between spaces. Here's what I've learned about that. It's a requirement because it builds trust. It builds fortitude, builds a deeper state of listening for, well, what could it be?
Yes.
And that listening becomes the required listening for what's next. And we do not build that listening when we, if we were able to just jump from one to the next.
We're able to know. And you said I can't remember how you said trust, but it requires us to trust.
Yeah.
Because to me, the definition of trust is courage in action, which means to have no idea any further than 1 foot in front of you. And everywhere you look, it's the fog's rolled in, and you still say, okay, I trust.
Yeah.
I feel that, okay, I'm going to step 1 foot this direction. But how do you know? Well, I don't. That has to be courage in action to me. And trust being an actual state we choose in every moment.
When has that been most difficult for you?
With mental illness that I went through in my earlier life, and that's it. That's a lot to say that, because
really more than Jack,
more than my son. So there was a number of different times, 2 specific times I hit a bottom, where it was the end of the road, quite literally. I had a critical case of obsessive compulsive disorder, which is called antitrust, really. And anyone with OCD, I say that with respect. I've been there. Like, my measurement was 38 out of 40 on the obsessive Brown scale, which should have been probably hospital. That I was just such a stubborn, fighting. Yeah, as I always have been. But the truth is, when I turned around and looked at the path I'd carved in not trusting and the steps I'd have to take to walk back, those were the most defining, you haven't trusted for years, moments. And then I'm proud to say that, second to that was the birth of my son, who suffered a global brain damage with a birth accident and 14 months later passed away. That I had learnt the fortitude and resilience to trust through most of that experience. That would be the second time where trust disappeared, and trust in myself doesn't disappear. Trust in what the world understood about brain injury. That was hard to realize, that as I looked around in a moment of despair and went, what do I do for my son? I realized no one at the top even knew. That was a very scary moment.
Where did that bring you when you recognized no one even at the top knows?
That's such a great question. Thank you, Jeffrey. I had 2 feelings at the same time. An utter disdain for those that pretended they knew, namely neurology, and particular neurologists. And at the same time, entire and full abandon into the trust of the intelligence of life itself or source. That all I had was to throw up my arms and say, I'm with you. And I put you before everything forever again. And that anything else, any understanding, knowing, or fear, or doubt, or reckoning, it pales in comparison to the priority being my trust is with you, God. And whatever this life is, this moment shows me we don't know. So how can I do anything but just trustful? And you were there with me in that moment, Jeffrey. I remember you met me for a coffee in that exact moment I was in, and thank you.
Yeah.
And that crystal you gave Jack, my son, is still with me.
Yeah. Yeah. That was passed on from my dear friend and business manager, Pat.
Thank you, Pat.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I feel like this is the beginning of many potential episodes we could do. Let me just share this. Actually, there's one more place I want to go, and then I'll share this, and we'll close. So the two of you, you come up through the ranks as rock and roll touring musicians in the Kin, moved to LA to try your hand at songwriting. You get the calling to develop the songwriter's journey, which you've been doing that for 5-6 years now, done some amazing things. I've been a part of it. I'll talk about that before we close. And now I see both of you starting another next expression, right? And I love this because so often I think around projection in particular, right? Oh, look at them. They have it all together. Oh, look at them. It probably just came easy for them, or look at them and, fill in the blank with whatever the projection is. But we all start again, and we start again, and we start again, And so, Thorald, you've begun expressing your voice around mental illness and your journey with that and what you've learned through your podcast. What's the podcast called, by the way?
It's called Embracing Crazy.
Embracing Crazy. So good.
And he has a new album that he hasn't told anyone about.
I have told
it's incredible.
Thank you. Isaac's my artist manager. Talk about brother love.
Yeah.
I've been making an album for 2 years as well.
You can finally fire me whenever you want.
And it is all about my mental health journey. And mental health, I'm cool with that name. To me, it's mind body relationship. It's what happens when you form new relationships to being at home in this body experience that you're going to only have for a finite period of time. And when you feel it all again, watch what happens to your expression in the world. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm being that for the first time fully this year.
I love it. And I love it what you just said. What happens when you can be it all again? I think that so much of what the two of you both do is there's this constant, continual invitation that you make back in. It's actually back in and far out at the same time. There's the heaven and earth breeze.
That's nice.
But there is this, what does this, you use this term whole body instrument. What does this whole body instrument feel like? What does it have to say? How does it want to express? And, you both know I went to school for music. I studied the voice. No one ever talked to me about my body. Ever. They talked to me about my voice, right? They never, apart from like, what is the diaphragm and how does it work and how do we breathe and whatnot? But the expression of the body as an instrument. And to see your journey, Thorald, of deep mental illness to the point where you're completely disassociated or quite disassociated from your body,
Completely.
to the place where now you're the voice for the for the invitation into this body experience, right? One of the things that when I broke up with this one guy I dated for quite some time, who was my, like, I used to always date, like, Mr. Big from Carrie Bradshaw and Sex and the City. Tall, dark, handsome, unavailable emotionally. That was my guy back in the day. And I finally broke up with him. And I'll never forget talking, like, just having that conversation with God in my car outside his house. And I was like, why did I have to date this guy? Like, what was that all about? Because we would sit there having dinner together and I'd just be bored. And there's a certain quality of, like, there was a certain quality in my parents' relationship that I was like, I want something different. And it really, like, it felt like my parents' relationship. Like, I just didn't have a ton in common. And the message came, you cannot disown something you have not yet owned.
Wow.
And I said, you took this relationship on to take ownership of that pattern and then consciously move on from it.
God, that's good.
And there's something I hear in your journey, Thorald, of taking on the mental health journey to really, I would say the converse of it is you cannot really claim something that you haven't lost, right? We really know something. We really own something, not just when we have it inherently, but we really own it. Those certain things that are deeply precious to us are the things that we've lost, that we had to go on our hero's journey to reclaim. And those are things that we know, that we embody.
Oh, yeah.
And so this piece about your body instrument and trusting it and finding your way back into it, it's just like seeing your journey through that landscape and how that helps us know our voice because we know ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. What a beautiful way of putting it.
Beautiful.
And Isaac, you and I recently spoke.
We did
about beginning to talk about. First of all, let me say, Isaac, many of the folks that I work with, and I would include myself in this oftentimes, are people I'd call reluctant messengers or reluctant leaders, right? Like, no, no, don't want this one. Really? Oh, there's no returns on our mission. Sure, can't do a trade-in. Certainly, there's got to be something easier than this one.
Yeah.
So what's it been like as you've begun exploring talking about music and God?
Well, I mean, I've been writing about this for 20 years, and it's just been my little secret, something that I couldn't possibly, I love the quote, I think it's Miles Davis, talking about music is like dancing about architecture. And so I looked at my philosophy teacher and I said, I got to go and be in music. If I'm going to really write something worthwhile, I got to go be in it, and I kept writing it. And, if you look behind music, there's an incredible lineage of the best thinkers of all time, Pythagoras, clairaudient, and all the way to Kepler, and science and religion meet over music. Science and religion bridge equals music. And it's not a new thought. It's common. But what I see in myself and others is that our everyday life is full of music, and in our communication is full of music and everything. And if we could be more aware, conscious, and creative with it, we could perhaps, make it meaningful, more meaningful. Music is existentially close to us, but proximally close to us, but existentially distant. And so I'm just curious as to what human behavior can shift when we wake up to the fact that, to me, in my opinion, music is that tool that we've been given to connect to the divine, to connect to ourselves, to come back home into the body, and to be part of this symphony, but actively, consciously, spiritually.
Yeah. I
It's
love
the
that
language
phrase,
of the human soul.
part of the symphony.
Yeah.
So good.
So, but how it feels, why I'm reluctant, because talking about it is one thing, and then being in it is another. And so I've always just chosen, oh, well, I want to be in it, you know. But there is this whole side of me that people don't get to experience. And it's the part of me that, before I go to bed, I'm reading mathematics and, looking at the Fibonacci sequence and, reading history and, these things that for the most part, aren't that interesting. You can't apply it to your purpose or your business or your life, in conversation. And so, I typically want to, I want my message to be practical for people in their life. I don't want it to be, ungrounded information or so what, okay, great, good, enjoy that, and mathematics generally just like, whoa, stay away from me, So, how can this help people in their lives? Because that's really, if I'm going to take up screen time, then I want it to be relevant to people. I want it to help people, and I don't want to do it just to have something to say. So,
I appreciate that. I always thought about, for years people have been like, oh, you should have a book. Have you written a book yet? You need to write a book. And I've always said, like, I'm not going to write a book until I actually feel like I have something to say. There's things I could say, but what needs to be said as me through me. So I appreciate you asking that question. I also, I love hearing you being in the middle of the wrestle with the content, right? In the middle of the wrestle with, like, because you are being called to speak on it in addition to being in it.
Particularly writing, writing calls me, and it's not something that I've given myself a chance to do. So, a blog feels relevant, and, giving people different levels. Like, here's the everyday level of the conversation. Here's if you want to get into, the science of it, because there's so much of it. And here's if you want to get into the spiritual and, the connection. Some call it a cult, but, to God. Here's music and God. And I think, there's so many different ways people could make it meaningful, or at least it is in mind. So I guess that's the message. Is music came to me by surprise, and it became my greatest teacher and my greatest kind of tool. And so I guess, and it surprised, we were born into an ashram family where it wasn't God. It's only recently our mother's been using the word God really more strongly, but it was always, you are God, God is in you. Meditate.
It's always
go inside. Says God.
It's the classic.
And I don't disagree with that. I'm just saying that there's the word God wasn't really used in our household, and it is a loaded word. But for some reason, it just, God and music go well together.
I love you sharing that, because oftentimes I find people are called to use particular words because they're loaded, because it does something, it triggers something, right? And the nice, pretty, sanitized version, frankly, doesn't really do it. So here's what I hope everybody listening is getting as you're listening to these humans, to listen to all of us in this conversation, is like, it's a never-ending journey. And you can be signed to Interscope and play major halls around the world. You can write for big ass artists, and you can keep going to the next journey and the next journey and the next journey. And as I listen to each one of you, it's such a model for how each one opens to the next and to the next and to the next. So thank you so much for sharing. I want to just share a little bit before we wrap here, about my experience in the songwriter's journey. And we've got another recording date set up here around the corner. We met, and there was this instant kinship. that brother experience you were talking about was immediate for us. And what I found fascinating and still love is I love both of you and have a unique relationship with each of you, a distinct brother relationship with each one of you. So for those of you listening, and it's evolved since then, because this is a little while back when I did the Songwriter's Journey, but you started by really understanding my hero's journey. You start by really understanding, what's the life I've lived, and what's the journey I've traveled, and how can we pull thematic elements for songs from it. And then you started this, you had me send 5 songs that I wish I had recorded, the Dream EP, to get a sense of what you call music cosmology. What kind of artist would I be? What kind of songs would I want to record? What's the feeling of them? And then you take that musical cosmology and my hero's journey, and you start to come up with melodic ideas using this. And we do a love-like session where we keep the stuff we love and toss the stuff we like. And then Isaac, we got into writing the lyrics to the tunes, and eventually went into the studio and recorded and produced them. And and before you know it, you have an album. And I love that you're able to take aspiring musicians, first-time musicians, people who used to do stuff and maybe not so much anymore, all the way up to chart-topping musicians, and take them on this journey into themselves and help them express that being with their big voice in the world. It is such a gift you bring, and in all the ways that I know you will keep bringing it, I say thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And what a pleasure it was to most recently witness your new deepening relationship with your voice, and we mean particularly in this case singing voice, one that didn't need to perform anymore, and one that was just beyond good enough, everything you needed to be ever in your voice, coupled with your incomparable quality, that you could trust in it and just dive into feeling all the feelables fully, and allow the microphone to witness those. And we're about to continue that journey, and that's a huge, remarkable thing to come from a singing study, to let go of technique, to let go of performance. And that goes for everyone here, that each human being listening, we're incomparable, distinct, magnificent voices carved from nature, God, source. And for a finite period of time, we get to sound out what it feels like to be us and alive if we courageously dare to fully. And that could be in a new business, that could be in a song, that could be in a sculpture, that could be making a family, whatever it is. We dare you to step in and share it. And we cannot wait to complete this EP with you, and sing it and share it and celebrate you.
Beautiful. Thank you both. Thank you for the gift you are. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your deep sharing. Such a gift. Where can folks find more about you, your music, your work? Where can we find? Give us the details.
Well, it's brotherskoren.com, and it's also at Brothers Koren. Today we're up to more than ever. We have a new course coming out on the Shift Network called Uncovering Your Soul's Voice Through Song, coming up in May. We have our online courses, our Singer's Journey. We begin today, Jeffrey.
We're so excited.
The Songwriter's Journey, groups and privates. We've never been more bioavailable to help voices from all walks of life. So find us at brotherskoren.com.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. And I know that you're working with folks that are like, I hate my voice, or I only sing in the shower, or I've always wanted to sing, but I've never done it. All the way up to professional, or I can't sing, all the way up to professional musicians. So for those of you who are around song in particular, are like, do I fit in that description? I would say there's a place for you with the Brothers Koren. So I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. Thank you for being here. Hey there, thanks so much for listening in. If this conversation was powerful, if it stirred your soul or inspired your journey, then be sure to share it with a friend. Just copy and paste the link wherever you're listening to this podcast and text that link right now to a friend that you think would be inspired by this episode. And if this is your first time here, be sure to click that subscribe button over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a rating and review so I can get to know you and your thoughts better. To learn more about the work I do with emerging and established paradigm changers, go to thecourageousmessenger.com. That's all for today. Thanks so much for being here, and I hope to see you in the next episode.